This channel is supported by Truefire. Truefire is an online library.
You can get the Truefire All Access Pass for as cheap as they ever do it, the $99 thing. So just jump and do that if you're looking for the best price you can get Truefire All Access for.
Okay, continuing the deep dive into milking videos out of the Helix. These are questions that I've had about personal, pieces of gear of my own. And I guess if you click this video, potentially you do too. But this is the whole point of, getting pieces of gear like this for me really is to try and answer questions that I would have had. That's what I did when I first got a Strymon Iridium back in 2019. And that's kind of what I continue to do now. So one of the really important questions that I think people had was around what can this do in terms of DSP? I can remember for years and years and years reading from some folks on Facebook who are finding I love the Helix. I don't necessarily need to upgrade, but what I would love would be a unit with more DSP because I constantly max it out. Similarly, with the HX Stomp, for me personally, an HX Stomp was what I use more of the time, which is like half of a processor of a Helix, right? My kind of thing I'd run up against is that I was like, right, I'd like to do a little bit of dual amping, but if I do that, I run out of DSP. But I don't need necessarily like the full Helix DSP, but I'd just like the HX Stomp to be a bit more powerful. So I think that's kind of the basis of where I'm thinking at in this video. Eric Klein did joke with me that I should call the video, or I would call the video, is the Helix Stadium Underpowered. So maybe for you, Eric, I might have chosen that title. But probably I won't do that because I think there's a danger that you just not watch enough to figure out what the real answer is. So also, look, I don't know, I haven't tried this yet. This is a preset that used to have to be spread across 2 lines. Now it can fit on 1. Yeah, the DSP is much. The first thing to say is that DSP is not the whole equation. So there's DSP and there's also CPU. So I'll first try and show you in terms of DSP. So like the old Helix, or one processor of the old Helix, can run essentially 3 Cosmos echoes in stereo. So for instance, a full Helix therefore, if you maxed it out, we'll just do this video based on one processing side, because I think that's what most of us Helix guys understand. But understand that what you can do on this path here can also be repeated on this path here. So, for instance, if we brought in a stereo Cosmos Echo, which I think is the most intensive DSP delay that there is. So we open that, let's go home. Then if we copy this, I do like the speed of the touch screen for it. It does add, so that would have maxed out our Helix at this point, right? We can do six of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, I don't know whether we might be able to do... So, in that instance, it looks like maybe that could be double the power. Now, another thing that we could do... There was this question around... So, the King of Tone is known to be 20% of the Helix, according to Ben Vesco. So if you were to add in the Tone Sovereign here, how many of them can we add? So let's just try this. So copy block. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So we've got 12 instead of, what did I say, 5, right? So maybe about double the DSP is kind of like a little bit of a... It's up in the air. Like, this is not science. This is not exact. But in terms of raw DSP power, that looks to me like the sort of thing you might be looking at. It might be double the power, maybe a little more than that. So like I said, with the Cosmos Echo, we can double that. So 3 to 6. With the Tone Sovereign, which is, you know, the most intensive distortion block in the Helix, which takes up 20% of a Helix's processor. Here, it takes up 8.3%. So, yes, from 20% to 8.3%. Now, where I think some folks might end up, you know, falling afoul of this and thinking, oh, well, maybe this doesn't have as much power as I thought. Say, for instance, this is the Chase Bliss glitch preset that I've got in here. So this is using a legacy amp model. Now, what I can do, which probably I definitely wouldn't have been able to do in the old Helix, would be to, because this is quite a complex thing already. We've got an amp, we've got two stereo delays, we've got a cab, we've got a stereo modulation, we've got a stereo reverb. I think you'll probably find that I can add a poly pitch block to it. Now, this was a block that largely was not that easy to fit into one processor on the Helix in the past, right? You'd probably have to spread this all out onto a different path. But what you cannot do, and this kind of goes to show that there's some other stuff going on behind the scenes, because we know that a Poly Capo takes up about half a processor. So given that we know that this is also about double the power, you'd think, well, maybe I'd be able to run more than one pitch block per path. But there is a limitation in that regard, so you actually cannot. So that's... There are some, I think, rules behind the scenes, and this is one of those things where DSP is only half of the equation. Like, you've also got other things going on, like CPU, memory, whatever the bits and pieces are. Is it RAM? I don't know. Do you know what I mean? Like, someone out there can help me in the comments with this. I'm not a scientist, but I'm just trying to show you what is actually going on here. So, like I say, what you'll find is that a preset that was maxed out in Helix, I believe you will be able to get more stuff in there. So, like, probably your maxed out preset, you'd be able to add in your poly pitch if you wanted to, or something like that, or like an additional Cosmos Echo, but you won't necessarily be able to run crazy presets where it's like, okay, well, I've got a poly pitch here and then multiple poly pitches. The poly pitch, stop saying poly pitch, is still going to be like a one per path thing going on. The other thing that is going to catch some people out, potentially, I think, is that the Agoura amps are, of course, upgraded and using not only more CPU or DSP for reasons of, you presume, like modeling accuracy and stuff like that, but also because they now have on them 2 channels. So you think actually that's like now the equivalent of having the 2 amp blocks. So like if you had the deluxe reverb normal channel and the deluxe reverb vibrato, and for that reason, if you were to put in, for example, a Poly Pitch or Poly Capo, whatever, here. So we've got the Poly Pitch, we've got the Agoura amp, and we've got, let's put in, can we get in the Cosmos Echo, hopefully, in stereo? Hopefully. And then can we get in a stereo reverb? Yes. Can we get in a drive? So now we're reaching points where we've actually kind of gone beyond what we could do with this one processor. So again, I think that's not necessarily a DSP thing as much as potentially a memory thing as well. I could probably dual amp this dual cab here. I wanted to. So you are, on the face of it, that maybe looks like it might be less power than you might have expected, but don't forget we've got a Poly Pitch there, we've got 2 amps essentially because the Agoura is 2 in there, we've got a stereo Cosmos Echo, and we've got the stereo dynamic plate, which is about the most DSP intensive reverb that there is as well. Can we get anything else in on that line? Possibly, possibly not. Yeah, so we could get like a trem or EQ, like a tilt EQ. Could we get a looper in? No. Get an effects loop in. Get a gain pedal in. But we start to kind of bump up against limitations in that way. But of course, we've got another path there to utilize if we want to. I think you'll probably find that most of what you want to do in there, you probably can do. I'll try and find like a really intensive preset that I can put together to give you some idea of this and just show you that now. So for example here, so we got up here, this is like my a typical sort of preset that I might run, but it's not. It's kind of more than. So we got a gain block here, Poly Pitch, an Agoura amp. Here's an EQ block. There's a stereo cab, dual cab, then a stereo dual delay, a stereo reverb, and another stereo reverb. So that is already, I think, indicative that you can do quite a bit more on this processor. You wouldn't get 2 stereo reverbs in with a Poly Pitch on your normal Helix, especially not with for example, down here then, what we've actually got going on, 2 amps, 2 litigators go into a stereo cab, Cosmos Echo, again, which would have taken up about 40% on the old Helix, a dynamic plate, and a Poly Pitch. So, I mean, whether or not that looks like anything you might build is, I guess, a totally different question. But for example, over here now, this is quite an intense preset. So that's one chain up here, which I've kind of maxed out, I think, right? I don't think I can add anything else up here. Not even an EQ, so that's pretty firmly maxed out. So this is a Poly Capo, gain block, Agoura amp, EQ, doing stuff, cab. I mean, I could get rid of that EQ actually, because I don't need that with the Agoura amps, I don't think. So that frees up a little bit of stuff. So I can actually run quite a range of things here now. So maybe even a harmonic trem. Or maybe a drive. There's a few choices that I could have around drives. Or maybe even, could I get in here and get into my legacy compressor, boost comp? No, I can't. Try old Tommy Bukovac one. Or what else could we do? Maybe we might even be able to do like a, I don't know. There's probably a large range of things. We could probably add like another delay if we wanted to. Put that down there. But we've also got an entirely separate set down here, so we could run, you know, one of these heavier amps if we wanted to. I don't think these are going to particularly gel particularly well with what I'm doing here, but for example, a rev, stereo plate, transistor tape, drives, so add in a few. Why not one of them? Can we still get in a poly pitch? I doubt it at this point, but maybe? No. So we start to then get into the realms of so what would we have to take out to get back in the poly pitch? There you go. Do we still have anything that we can run drive-wise? Compulsive drive, top secret OD. So, you know, if you start using poly pitch again, or Poly Capo, I mean, we could change that to Poly Capo actually, couldn't we? Which takes up slightly less. I guess another thing that we're going to be able to make better use of, I'm going to presume we might even be able to get the ADT reel in some of these things. So if you were to do some double tracking bits, this is another delay which has been typically quite hard to fit in. Something here that would not really be achievable on the old Helix at all. Down on this block, I've added, so this is kind of my normal sort of situation I was just showing you, but I've added here a Timmy, a Poly Capo, the Rev 20 purple, a cab, and then ADT stereo. So this is entirely, this would not be possible, essentially. Then on top of that, we can, if we want to, for example, if I sign this here, That wouldn't be possible on the old Helix. It is here. Whether you think that sounds any good is another question altogether, but that is... And we've still got a Poly Capo up on the top as well, so we've got 2 Poly Capos in this preset. We could jump this one up an octave if we wanted to. Yeah, it's got a lot more juice.